I'm Ann Bocock, and welcome to Between the Covers. David Lawrence Jr. has had an extraordinary newspaper career. As one of the best-known journalists in the country, his resume includes publisher of the Detroit Free Press and the Miami Herald, where during his tenure, the paper won 5 Pulitzer Prizes. He's now a leading advocate for children, serving as chair of the Children's Movement of Florida. He's the author of A Dedicated Life, Journalism, Justice, and a Chance for Every Child. Please welcome David Lawrence Jr. Welcome. Your book is really 3 parts. It is your growing up part, it is your extraordinary career in journalism, and it is where we are now as a child advocate. And after reading it, I realized that everything in your life has brought you to where we are right now. And if it's all right with you, I'd like to start at the very beginning. And because we are a show about books, Between the Covers, your story in a way started with a book, 1945 edition of a book called The Egg and I, something your parents had read. Can you tell me about your parents?
So my parents were from well-off backgrounds, New York City and Long Island, a banking family, a judicial law family, Mayflower Society, Social Register. My mother made her debut in 1936 at the Waldorf Astoria. That's a different kind of world than most of us would ever touch. And my parents, and by 1945, had 5 children, ultimately to have 9. They were the deepest romantics you can imagine. They loved each other so deeply. The 9 children in the family were important, but their love was more important. And a book came out at the end of World War II called The Egg and I, and some of you may have seen the movie with Claudette Colbert and Fred MacMurray about a city couple going to the farm and sort of messing it up. And so we moved from New York City to several hundred miles away on the heel of Lake Ontario, where the lake effect is enormous in terms of snow. And my parents bought for $3,000 some dollars, 33.5 acres. And my father's dream was, he had worked in the newspaper business. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll work on a great American novel. I'll work at the weekly newspaper. If you want to know how small this was, it was the Sandy Creek News. And I'll have a farm, and my idea of farming is maybe we'll have 2 goats, 2 chickens, 1 horse, 2 cows, and so forth. Well, it turns out that farming doesn't exactly work that way. And we ended up in a chicken farm, which is the least glamorous form of farming.
From socialite to chicken farming, I love it.
And my parents loved each other, loved us, thought it was a great place for children to be raised. And I grew up in a very old-fashioned home. All 11 of us would sit around the big table, and my father would quiz us over dinner about politics and government and books, and as well as how we did in school that day. And I can still remember my 8-year-old sister not knowing who the governor was, and the rest of us laughing at her not knowing who the governor was. And she's really smart, has more degrees than I have, and so forth and so on. But it was the kind of family, we didn't have a lot of money, I promise you. We get the World Book Encyclopedia, and I'm 11 years old then, the second oldest of 9. And it was fun just to read the encyclopedia, page after page after page.
You know, your family sounds like the fictional Walton family to me.
Well, no, we were as good at, or not better than the Walton family.
So what was the magic formula of the Lawrence family?
I think it was love and values. I think it was people who had real faith. Certainly think it was people who loved this country, believed in this country. People ask me, why is justice in the title? And we had grown up, we did grow up with a sense of fairness and justice and so forth. And in fact, my father had been, when he went to Manhattan College in New York, had been in it was called the Racial Relations Club in 1939. That was pretty early for your basic
Certainly.
white folks to be thinking a whole bunch about that. It certainly wasn't the preponderance. So the sense of fairness and justice was a big deal.
The recession comes, and because of that and your mother's health, the family, all of you, move pretty far, as far south pretty much as you can get, to Florida. Must have been an interesting road trip. But this is where your passion for journalism begins, when you come to Florida.
Well, my passion for journalism, I so loved my father and admired my father and mother so deeply that when my father was in farming, I was going to be a farmer. And when my father went back into journalism, and he was dean of the press corps in Florida, I went back and I went into journalism for that reason. I so loved and admired him that's why I went into journalism. I wish it were more complicated than that, but it isn't.
You talk in the book, was it a $20 a week job when you started?
Well, I started in the newspaper business working in the back shop of a newspaper in Sarasota, Florida. Was it $15 or $20? It was some very significant sum. And then I started a career full-time out of the University of Florida. For $95 a week, I was married. We had a child 9+ months later, but we were fine. And our vision was, boy, if we could make $10,000 by the time we were 30, we were in the high cotton.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Fast forwarding, and I'm fast forwarding through an entire career nearly, you have met presidents, plural. You've dined with the Queen of England. You have met the Pope. And you were a publisher of the Detroit Free Press, as I said, and Miami Herald, where you won Pulitzers. Can you point to a moment or a story that you are most proud of?
You know, the nature of my life, despite the book might be evidence against this, and I'm always looking forward. My mother used to call me a romantic. I've been a romantic all my life. I will be willing to cry with anyone at a movie. I want to have as many happy endings for people as can be mustered. I've always loved what I've done. I'm as idealistic and optimistic at age 77 as I was 60 years ago. Now that's a bit naive because you get burned from time to time. But you get a lot more done in this world if you're expecting good things and then work hard to make them happen. But all of my values are simple. I don't play golf. I don't play tennis. I never have. I read at least a book a week, mostly history and biographies. Folks here will probably understand this. I frequently say I'm only as happy as my unhappiest child.
We will all understand that.
Because they grew up and they have adult problems, just like we do, and I can't fix them. But
You write that newspapering for you was a career of justice. What does that mean?
well, remember that the newspaper business at one time, not that many years ago, was very, very significant. I fear that there are only going to be a handful of newspapers in print in large cities, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and in medium-sized urban areas, I just see people in the world of digital now and so forth and so on. But I've always thought that part of the obligation was to tell people what is going on without being egomaniacal, to see what difference you could make in this world. Somebody I quote often is Horace Mann, who was more or less the inventor of the American public school system, who said way back in 1859 to the graduating class of Antioch College, "Be ashamed to die before you have won some battle for humanity." It doesn't need to be a big thing, but it needs to be something. That's the joy of life.
Going back to journalism, has the definition of good journalism changed? And what is the trade-off that we have because we now have access in our pocket at all times to information?
Well, we now live in a world where people see two things on the iPhone and somehow think I've read the paper this morning. And we have more choices than any time in our history. And I still get two newspapers in print at home and like to turn the pages. But we live in a world where we have untold number of choices, television, radio, et cetera. People tend to be an MSNBC person or a Fox person. No one is informed in this republic unless this person is getting his or her news and information from multiple places and then deciding for himself or herself, oh, okay, I think this is what I think at this point. The loss of the daily newspaper in terms of what it was is a significant blow to the republic, I think.
You write in the book that and we're coming to the child advocacy part, that you had an aha moment, and this happened in a preschool daycare center in a pretty challenged Miami neighborhood where the kids were reading a picture book, and it had pictures of farm animals. And
so these are 3 and 4 year olds. There are 21 of them. This is several summers ago. It's in Liberty City in Miami, which is a significantly challenged neighborhood. I'm in a YMCA, Early Learning Center, and sitting with 21 children, and they're sort of in a semicircle gathered around me, and they have bright faces, and they care, and they're smart in many ways. And I'm reading Old MacDonald Had a Farm. Now, I didn't even know there was a book called Old MacDonald Had a Farm, but it's the same thing that you and I remember. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, et cetera. On the front cover is Mr. MacDonald, and he has a red and white check shirt, and he has on what I call overalls, and he has a straw hat, and through the straw hat are peering 2 bunny ears. And so if I'm reading a book with a child, I'll ask, what's this? What's that? And so I ask, what kind of animal is this on the front cover? And nobody knew. 2 of them said cow. Not one of them guessed rabbit. Now, I know my 3 and 4 year old grandchildren would have known this, and maybe they knew an aardvark as well. That's tragic. And there are hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of children each year who are born who are going to be way behind and then get further behind. And I shudder for the shape that these children are going to be when they enter kindergarten, first grade, second grade.
You're now chair of the Children's Movement of Florida. We're skipping a lot of space between that early learning center and here.
We can extend the show if you'd like.
We may have to. Okay. What was your vision for creating a movement?
So I think a movement is about everyone. So I'll frequently ask an audience, tell me about a movement, and they'll tell me the feminist movement or the civil rights movement. And I'll say, what was the civil rights movement about? And invariably people will say African Americans, minorities, et cetera. I said, you're absolutely wrong. It's about an American sense of equity. It's about everyone. Same principles that raised my 5 children are the same principles that raise anyone's child. The right blend of health and education and nurturing and love. All children need all of those things. We passed in Miami a dedicated funding source for children because I argued it was about everyone's child. It's an extra $150 million a year now. I co-led a campaign to pass pre-K for 4-year-olds in Florida. Florida's not a famous education state. I don't want to hurt anybody or give you a revelation here, but it's not a famous education state. Yet we passed a constitutional amendment overwhelmingly for free pre-K for 4-year-olds, and we're only one of 4 states in the country that have done it. But the vision was always, it was about everyone's child. And a startling statistic is that 3 out of 4 young people ages 17 to 24, this is hard to believe, cannot enter the American military, have a substance abuse problem, a criminal justice problem, an academic problem, or a physical challenge. That ought to scare us for the national security of this country. So quickly, I say, the first several years are critical. 85% of brain growth occurs by the age of 3. 30% of children enter school behind, and most of them get further behind. Teaching frequently is as much triaging as teaching. If you have 100 children at the end of first grade who are lousy readers, at the end of fourth grade, 88 of 100 are still lousy readers. It's very hard to catch up kids when they get so far behind. And a high-quality teacher of 4-year-olds can tell you more or less who's going to make it in the world.
So the 4-year-old age is the critical age.
Well, no, I'd say actually the most critical is 0 to 3. It's from before birth to age 3. Language development in the first 18 months is simply hugely important. And if you have 85% of brain growth occurring by the age of 3, you'd better pay a lot of attention to all of that thing. You better learn how to use going to Publix as an early literacy experience with a child. You better learn that television is a perfectly awful babysitter because children need interactivity with other human beings.
Your advocacy is for all children, even though that experience that we were talking about was children that were most like disadvantaged. This is for everyone's children.
We would have never passed, in 1988, a woman named Janet Reno, then the state attorney of Miami, or what was called Dade County, tried to pass a dedicated funding source for children and argued it was about children over here, here, and here, and you can imagine what she meant by that. It was well-meaning, well-intended, good human being, and so forth, that failed 2 to 1. I argued 14 years later it was about everybody's child. Do certain children need far more? Of course they do. Do certain families need more? Of course they do. But you need to think about our children and never those children.
You did mention passing the bill for the voluntary pre-K, which I must say you must be extremely persuasive because you did this in an economic downturn, which would be more taxes.
Well, I have enormous faith in people. This may be another part of my naivete. I expect good things from people. I expected good things from my children. I expect good things from people. And I think people, if they trust you, know how their money is being spent, they're going to be for it. Grandparents know, for instance, that they want their children and grandchildren to grow up in a world that's safe and secure. We need more people buying cars and homes and paying the burdens of society. We spend $2 billion plus in this state alone for elementary and secondary remediation. Spend some more money more wisely up front, and we would have far more successful people. 40%, painfully, 40% of third graders in the state of Florida cannot read at minimally proficient levels. It's a big challenge.
That is a huge challenge. I cannot overstate what you have done. You've been the driving force behind the children's movement. Interesting, you started this after you retired from a huge...
No, I started it to retire. That is, Governor Childs, whom I liked a lot and thought was a especially good human being, asked me to lead a statewide task force on school readiness. I'd never even heard of the subject, didn't know what it was. The work I did made me decide the future of this country depended on children getting off to a better start, so I decided to retire and work full-time on this.
You know, for a lot of people, retirement, they are defined by career, and retirement can be very daunting. This really, begs the question that there is always another chapter.
Well, there should be multiple chapters in people's lives, and I promise you I'm not saving my energy for the next world, because I don't think I'm really going to need a whole bunch of it there. And life's short, and as you get older, you have far more of a sense of it. I'm now old enough that I think and enough scar tissue that I have some wisdom, and I'd like to share that wisdom and energy with other people. So no miracles are going to happen on my shift, but we could help a whole bunch of people, and there are lots of people involved in this, I promise you. And they in turn could help other people. And that's, for all the flaws of this country, it is a deeply well-intended. We want to be good people. And this is part of that.
You write beautifully about your own family, 5 children and 7 grandchildren, and your wife, Roberta, you've been married more than 50 years.
55.
55 years. She deserves a lot of credit.
No. She deserves a lot of credit and then way more.
Okay.
I am more in love with my wife than when we were married on December 21st, 1963. So I'm an enormously blessed human being. And I'm not sure I realized it for decades, but I have the strongest sense of it now. No, I'm blessed. Much of what I've been able to achieve is because I had somebody really helping me.
You end each chapter in a dedicated life with something you call a life lesson learned at the end of every chapter. Could you share one of those that you particularly like with us?
Well, I can't even remember what's in the book. I'm exhausted. I'm 77. Don't plague me not right now. So I'll give you some lessons. Be willing to work harder than almost anybody else. Work purposefully. Give people the benefit of the doubt. It's easier to tell the truth or try to tell the truth than it is to sort of funny farm a bunch of things. Make some difference in this world. Figure out how to learn all your life. I have a joy in reading books. I have more things to talk about. One of the things I've done in my own work is I've raised millions of dollars. And how do you do that? You build relationships with other human beings. You have more things to talk about. I've been in 56 countries. I've learned in every one of those. My wife and I last year went with the Mengele twin who just died. We went to Auschwitz. I need to see what's going on in this world. And I'm deeply worried that in this world, in this country, we have a nationalist tide, not a patriotic tide, a nationalist tide in the Philippines, in Hungary, in Poland, in the UK, and in the United States of America. And we got a country of 330 million people. We got to figure out what we're going to do together. We need to learn about each other. You're not going to turn back the tides of history here. And we've never had too golden an age. We still need a lot of things to do in this country.
As beautiful as this book is, and there are some lovely things to read in here, when I read it, I feel this sense of urgency coming from you. Am I right?
Well, I've been insecure all my life, so I'm serious. Actually, I have been. I'm always insecure about what I haven't done or can I do this, and then I sort of have the chutzpah to go ahead and try it. Yeah. No, I do feel a sense of urgency about lots of things, and I realize that how much will be undone upon my passing. But maybe I can set an example, other people set an example, other people follow it, making more progress.
Where are we now from when you started with the children's movement? Where are we now, and do you see the progress?
Oh, I absolutely see the progress, and I'm encouraged by it. I'm heartened by it, but boy, this is no time to rest. When I tell you that 40% of third graders can't read at minimally proficient levels, that's got to be a wake-up call. And if you think, boy, it's going to get better after third grade, the percentage of people not at grade level in the 10th grade is lower than it was at third grade.
You mentioned earlier about kids, teenagers not being able to pass the military entrance exam. We have to be able to compete globally in this country.
Sure, and this is such a different world because when I go to Manatee High School in Bradenton, Florida, you know, anybody could get a job. Only a few of us relatively went to college. Most people got retail jobs, or maybe they dug ditches or sold cars or fixed cars. When I went to the University of Florida, I had to be able to use an M1 rifle. Well, boy, the American military is at the far end of sophistication. M1 rifle, boy, that's way old and not that complicated. You need really bright people working hard with the right values to protect this country.
The book is A Dedicated Life, Journalism, Justice, and a Chance for Every Child. David Lawrence Jr., I want to thank you so much for being here and for writing the book. I'm Ann Bocock. Please connect with us and join me on the next Between the Covers.
You did great.